So what was day one like? Orientation? We showed up, they had no idea what to do with us. Didn't know who we were, didn't know we were supposed to be there. Kind of had to figure it out. Welcome back to No Ordinary Path, everybody. My name is John. Today is another Real Talk Tuesday, specifically a travel nurse takeover. I've been looking forward to making this video. This is going to be my review of TriStar Centennial Hospital. Let's jump in first. I'm going to hit you with the numbers of the hospital. I'm going to give you my likes and dislikes, what it was like working there, and then just kind of like the final take on how things went. TriStar is in Nashville, Tennessee. It is a large hospital system. It is HCA, 741 bed hospital. It is part of a large campus. This is like, not campus as in like school campus, campus as in like big corporate hospitals, all within a 43-acre plot of land. I'm going to read the list of what's on there. Heart and Vascular Center, it's like a hospital in and of itself. The Women's Hospital, the Children's Hospital, Sarah Cannon Cancer Institute, an Advanced Joint Replacement Hospital, and of course the Parthenon Pavilion. Big place, really big place. The Parthenon Pavilion is the central hub of everything. It's kind of a funny name, but it is gorgeous. It is open, huge skylights, this huge central area with trees, and you can sit out there and eat lunch and all that kind of stuff. It is very pretty. The emergency department has around 95,000 visitors annually, although this is not a registered trauma center by any means. I would say I couldn't find a trauma designation for them, but I would be willing to guess that it's at least a 3, maybe even a 4. It is not about trauma. They do have another trauma system. TriStar has many hospitals in the Nashville area, and there is one called Skyline, which was not very far down the road, that is a designated trauma too. But this is a smaller emergency department, although still busy, of course, with all the COVID stuff that's been going on. In terms of ICU, since I'm an ICU nurse, that is what I do. There are 4 main ICUs here. There is a cardiovascular ICU. You're going to have a medical surgical ICU, a cardiac ICU, and the neuro ICU. The CV ICU, cardiovascular ICU, is going to be your typical like open hearts and all that, TAVRs, the things that go with that. And your cardiac ICU is more of like the heart failure specialty, stuff like that. If I had to guess, I would say that this hospital is primarily focused around the heart and vascular system. They have a huge CV program where they do a lot of open heart surgeries, revascularization, stuff like that, big vascular center. So let's get into the actual review of this. This review may be a little different and slightly biased in a couple of areas because this was a crisis contract. It was also a contract with a different agency. This was my first time working with Fastaff, so there were some things that probably went different because of that. I took 48 hours a week, so I worked 4 shifts a week instead of 3. And I think some of that did kind of affect the way I viewed things a little bit. So knowing that, take that into account too. All right, here's my likes. The acuity of patients. I worked mostly in the medical surgical ICU, which was essentially the COVID unit. Large, big ICU unit split into 4 different sections of 4 different pods. Each pod had about 10 beds, so pretty good size unit. This unit was split into basically COVID, on the ventilator, pretty sick, ECMO patients, and then what they called the pulmonary rescue unit, which was actually the ECMO patients that had been COVID long enough to become COVID negative, but their lungs were still trashed to the point where they needed to stay on the ECMO machines to continue therapy and help them out in that regard. I did enjoy working in that unit because I was able to take really high acuity patients. There were a lot of one-to-ones. I did take ECMO patients, which is neat. They have ECMO specialists, which you can kind of think of as their perfusionists that kind of manage 3 or 4 of them at a time, kind of out there in the hall, watching and running the numbers in the different machines and that kind of stuff. But as the nurse, primary nurse, you're helping take care of all the patient care stuff and the general meds, and it was a one-to-one assignment. So I got plenty of one-to-one. That was kind of fun. Also did CRT while I was there. So not very typical travel type stuff, but the acuity is definitely high in this hospital in terms of the medical surgical. Oh, I loved the parking garage. I know, right? I'm jumping from acuity of care to the parking garage, but it is worth mentioning because it's gigantic. It's huge, especially when the weather is crummy. It was very nice. The pavilion was really neat too. Oh, they had a Starbucks inside the hospital. I don't know. Maybe you guys can sense kind of how this is running here. I might be reaching a little bit, and we're gonna get to that. I will say this. One thing that I thought was really neat was the community involvement at this hospital. You know, from the parking garage going into the hospital, you go through this long skyway, and it is literally lined with signs that are made from other departments in the hospital, or, you know, schools, or just different places out within the community surrounding this hospital, of people that have written in thank you notes. We appreciate you, healthcare workers, and everything that you do. And, you know, a lot of us right now are really struggling with all the stuff that we've been dealing with and these heavy patient loads.
They do a good job of filling it with things from the community to kind of make us feel a little bit better. You can see them as I'm walking by here, all these little signs and stuff as I leave work today. It's pretty rough out there, but this helps a little.
Okay, the dislikes. No orientation. That was kind of ridiculous. I don't know if that was Fastaff. I don't know if that was HCA, this contract, a crisis contract. I don't know. I consider myself a pretty well-seasoned nurse. I've been in ICU and critical care and ER and flights and stuff for over 10 years. I've been traveling for 3 now. And there was no orientation, and did I make it work? Absolutely, I can. Nursing, traveling, doesn't really change. The care of the patient stays the same. But orientation to the hospital and orientation to the charting system are crucial, especially if you haven't ever had it, or you had it like 10 years ago like I have. I mean, I got sent to places that were in completely opposite hospital buildings through skyways, and I would be late because they'd be like, yeah, you're working over here at Sarah Cannon. Great, where's that? Well, you go down there, and it's like 12 different hallway turns to try to figure out where you're going. All that could have been solved on a single day of hospital orientation. 1 day is typical for most travel nurses. Sometimes it's 3, but this was 0, and that did affect and kind of set the stage for how everything else went for the whole contract. Again, I'm not 100% sure if it was Fastaff or because it was a crisis contract or what, that we didn't have orientation. And I did see some other travelers really struggle with this. There are no lifts in the patient rooms. That's always tough because these COVID patients, especially in ventilated patients, are really heavy. They had a few rooms with them, but they were all broken. So that kind of sucked. I just appreciate when a facility, you know, does that. To me, it shows that they, you know, are really forward thinking in terms of making sure that their staff are safer, because I feel like it's a safer thing to have. They didn't have a cafeteria. That was weird. It was all under, you know, construction when I was there. Now that will, you know, it's not going to be something that lasts. Obviously, they'll finish their construction. They had a Dairy Queen and a Subway that you could eat at, and of course their Starbucks, which was kind of neat for like the first week and then was awful the rest of the time. I'm not super good about bringing my lunch, and so eating there over and over and over again, Subway, was just a little on the rough side. It took a long time to learn this. This is part of that no orientation thing. That just was awful at first. And then it got better by the end of it. Meditech is archaic. I mean, why are we still using Meditech? I know it's owned by HCA, so that's probably why, but still. So what was it really like working there? Brutally honest, it was tough. The staff were not the friendliest. In fact, I will say that I even had charge nurses and stuff come up to me and be like, are we mean? You know, I've heard other travelers say that we're mean. And I was like, yeah, I mean, kinda. Not everybody, certainly. But there was definitely a lack of teamwork and a lack of cohesion in the unit. It depends on people and depend on shifts. You know, guys, there's always good apples and there's bad apples. And there, unfortunately, were a decent amount of difficult people to work with this. It just was not a friendly place to work. All that being said, I do chalk it up to the fact that, you know, it was a crisis contract. The staff are probably burnt out with us going in there. I know that there was a ton of travelers. It was probably difficult for them as well. I'm just being honest. This is a Real Talk Tuesday. It's a real review, you guys. I don't leave negative reviews. It's hard for me to do this. I have refilmed this a couple of times. So Kristen's telling me to be honest, and I'm trying. This is the first really negative review I've left, and so it feels a little weird, and I don't like doing it. But at the same time, you guys are looking to me to give you honest stuff, and so here's the honesty. It was not a fun contract. I did not enjoy working here. I don't necessarily blame everybody. It's a hard time that we're in right now, but I have worked at other places where it was still a hard time, and they had plenty of nasty sick patients, and everybody worked well together. So, I don't know. I get there the very first day. Basically, the only instructions I had from my recruiter was to show up at 6:45 and find the nurse's administration office. I didn't know where that was, so I kind of went in there, meandered around until I got directions. When I showed up, there were 4 other nurses from Fastaff that I was standing there with, and the nursing supervisor had no idea that we were even supposed to be there today. Didn't have any list. There was no orientation prepared. They didn't know what they were supposed to do with us. There were some phone calls that were made within the first 5 minutes as we all just stood there, and then it was, okay, well, you guys are ICU? Okay, well, why don't you go to CVICU? And I just was kind of like, okay, well, whatever. I mean, we all thought we were working a COVID crisis contract, so I thought for sure we'd be in a medical ICU. Fortunately for me, I've had lots of CVICU experience. CVICUs are notorious for doing their charting different. The way they document their INOs are different. Just the way that they run are different than the other ICUs. And if you've never worked in one, you don't really know that to go into. And so the other travel nurse that I was with really kind of was struggling a little bit because they didn't have any CVICU experience. And so to be thrown into that environment with no computer orientation whatsoever, there was nothing. It was a little hectic. They did pair us with a nurse for, I think, 4 hours, 6 hours, however many it was. It went by really fast. I had an open heart patient that was sick on CRRT. That was my first day. The next day I came to work, I was on my own. Good luck. And it was just kind of nuts. Again, I don't know if that's crisis. I don't know if it's Fastaff. I don't know if it was just this hospital. I can't attribute or point to one direction. But I remember I was in medical ICU the next time, and I got this, transfer from another hospital that came by air. They were super sick and needed all the things done in ICU where, they're really tanking fast. So they needed to be lined. We needed to intubate them. We needed to do all these things quickly. And I'm in there with the physician. It's a COVID room, so we're all gowned up. There's only the 2 of us in there. I'm trying to help him place a line on the patient, a central line in their neck. But he's telling me these orders, and I'm trying to put them into the computer with no knowledge of how to do this. And so the patient's getting worse, and we need levofed, we need vasopressors, we need all these things to kind of help the patient. Fortunately, I did have another nurse that saw how bad this was going and came in and just did the order process for me and really saved my life that day. I was very thankful for that nurse. And that's just kind of how the whole first half of the assignment went. The first 3 to 4 weeks were dedicated learning the charting system and how to do things and where was what. And there was plenty of floating. For being a contract that was supposed to be a COVID, I was really surprised at how much floating I did. I went all over the place. I would still say I worked the most time in the medical surgical ICU, but I went all over. I went to the cancer unit. The max patient load I had was 5 at one time. And then the least, of course, was 1-to-1s. And that was mostly in either the medical ICU or the cardiovascular ICU. By the end of it, it wasn't too bad. I had the charting system down. I only spent 6 weeks. It was a very brief contract, but I was also exhausted. I was kind of ready. There was a lot. It was just so much. It was a very sick contract. A lot of very sick patients in the ICU. Final thoughts. It was another HCA contract. I'm not so sure if I want to take any more of those. They just run different. I'm not too keen on working for a for-profit hospital. It just feels kind of weird sometimes. No judgment to anybody out there that does, but that's just me personally. Meditech sucks. I don't want to do it again. It wasn't too bad by the end, but it's so archaic feeling. I think they need to get over this COVID hump. They need to hire some more staff, and they need to probably do some, inter-facility teamwork stuff. And it has potential to be a great place to work. Plenty of high acuity. You are definitely taking care of all the sick patients. I think they're just in a slump right now because it's just really difficult with their staffing issues. And that was why we were there, was to help out with that. That pretty much is it, you guys. If you're going there, good luck. Let me know in the comments. I'd be curious to see if you've worked there in the past and what you think about it. And hopefully you found this review informative. I always enjoy making these. I will continue to do so. So if you're new, hit the subscribe button and we'll be around. Oh, you want to say hi? Hi. Hi. And yeah, thanks guys. Hit the thumbs up for the video. That always helps. And we'll see you out there. Okay, this is how you know it's been a bad day at work. Do you see the murder over here? Look at all of them. Today was my last day. It's a fitting farewell. That's a lot. That's a big murder.